I'm Stacy LeBaron, and this is another edition of Chelsea Hubcats. Today, Khalil Sakakini, the founder of Pet Grief Help, is joining us, and we also have with us our regular partner in crime, Laura Appleton, our volunteer from our outreach team at Hubcats Chelsea. So thanks again, Laura, as always, for coming today. Chelsea Hubcats is a nonprofit organization that was founded about 1.5 years ago to focus on the needs of cats within the city. We assist with free spay-neuter programs, vaccination and microchipping clinics, rescue for cats and dogs. To date, we've assisted more than 1,200 cats and dogs from Chelsea. For more information about our organization, you can go to www.hubcatschelsea.com and find us on Facebook and join the team to make a difference for cats. Our phone number is 857-776-2287, and our email is hubcatschelsea@gmail.com. So please reach out to us. I hope you can join us and help really make a difference for the animals in Chelsea. So on today's show, we unfortunately would like to talk about the topic of pet grief. And we have Khalil here to talk about the group and the ministry he has formed. And Khalil writes on his website, is it okay if I share the information from your website? Of course, it's there. Says here, losing your pet, your animal companion, feels like your heart is torn out. Don't be afraid or ashamed of your grief. Your love for your animal friend is profound. Deep grief needs help and time to lose its sharp edges and let you live again. Our mission is to give you a place to cry, to talk, feel safe, and help you heal. I think we could safely say in this room, and maybe the folks watching us, have all probably lost a very loved pet in our time. And so I was wondering, Khalil, if you could just share with us a bit about your background and why you decided to help folks that are dealing with this great sadness.
Yeah, I was a journalist for many years. I filed stories for NPR and Christian Science Monitor and a lot of print work. And that gradually lost its appeal to me because I felt I was not really serving other people as much as I was serving myself, eager to see how a story was rated, how it ranked, what kind of reviews it got. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, excuse me, I became a professional life coach, or sort of flirted with the idea of becoming a professional life coach. And that was good for a short period of time, but it didn't satisfy some inner calling. Some inner yearning that was still waiting to be listened to and responded to deeply. I have always loved animals, and then I lost a very beloved cat. We lost a very beloved cat who was, to me, the sunshine and the light of my life. And I began to realize that other people were suffering unexpressed, unprocessed grief and pain because it wasn't really acceptable to mourn so very deeply for an animal companion as it might be for a parent, a human being, whatever. So I needed to explore that further to find out what really was going on and what the animal-human bond was all about. And that took me into a lot of interesting discoveries that animals and humans have always had a connection, whether it was hunting with humans or working in the fields or in the military or whatever. But it wasn't until fairly recently that animals became an endearing part of the family, that they became, in effect, real companions, pets, and gradually they began to be identified as spiritual entities, as sentient spiritual beings. And with that realization that they came in the house from the fields, out of the barnyard into the home, something shifted neurologically, socially, spiritually, and then bonds that get formed suddenly became incredibly tight and profound. And so when those bonds were severed, there was a reaction, a deep, profound reaction. And we're only now beginning to respect that and honor that and allow those feelings their proper due and allow them to come to the surface and be fully expressed. So that's a view from here, anyway.
And you felt you had a calling to do more than just address the grief that you felt for yourself. You wanted to be able to help others.
Yes, and also, well, there are two parts to the work I do. There's one part called Animal Talks, and the other part is Pet Ministry, or Pet Grief is very much part of Animal Talks, so that we work certainly with processing grief and helping people go from hurt to healing and what that's all about. But also there are pet ministry issues such as the elderly, for example, who can't always keep their animal, or they can't even see that the animal isn't groomed maybe, or to carry a 10-pound bag of cat litter,
Right.
up the stairs, or to notice that the dish is not washed. And they've lost so much, the elderly, that having an animal with them, sharing their lives, is a powerful hold on a kind of self-respect and reality. So our pet ministry tends to work in those ways, in community-oriented stuff.
Very interesting.
Animal Talks includes touching upon grief processing, but also issues and fun issues like developing intuition, developing animal communication skills. How do you telepathically communicate with an animal? So yes, I felt called upon not just to respond to people's needs, but also to explore the outer edges of all the things that are possible.
That's very interesting. It's this time in a person's life, as you say, we've brought, in my world, it's always been a cat. There's always been a cat in my world, and the and that their time of passing is very, very challenging. If there is somebody out there dealing with grief, do you have any recommendations for how they should handle it, or do we, just sort of muddle through it? I've gotten phone calls from people saying, I don't know what to do. I've never felt like this before.
Yes.
I can't even take a step forward. Is there any advice?
Well, let me ask you, what would you say? What would you say to them? I'm just curious to see where you're coming from, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well,
Stacy, I like to know too, because I lost my dear family member Coco 3 weeks ago today, and I brought her. She was 4 years old, dilute Torty, and I brought her into Angel. Based on a vet recommendation. So I had a strange experience that I don't want to repeat, but it was horrendous. So I lost Coco. And it's different because it's sudden.
it was sudden, yes.
Were you, not to put you in the spot,
It's
but
okay.
were you implying that the care wasn't what it should have been?
Yes.
Because usually they're very good.
So
It's a big institution.
It's a big institution, and it's a big place, and many first-year and second-year vets have got to prove themselves in the training ground in the ER. But it's a question of the randomness of the event. So.
Of the event or the choice of?
I went to the emergency room for Angel, but the randomness of the event is who administers care.
Right, the luck of the draw.
Luck of the draw.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so
It's sad to
hard
hear.
when you have a cat go into an emergency environment. I had a cat when I was traveling in Europe who needed to go and have emergency treatment. And
The cat wasn't with you.
the cat was not with me. I had the cat sitter
Oh.
bring the cat to an emergency
biggest
room
fear.
environment. And there are a lot of decisions that
Yes.
need to be made very quickly. And as it is in people healthcare too, is that path is not always a clear path with regards to making decisions. And I think everybody does their best efforts, but and I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. But there are times, you know, the path may not have been the direct path. And you and I have spoken in the past, and you seem to be a very gifted communicator with animals too. And from a clinical setting to a more spiritual setting, there may be more that could play a role with regards to that, as well as to what happens after our kitties have passed too.
Stacy, curious, the kitty was okay in the end?
The kitty was okay, came back home to me. I mean, not perfect, was a hospice kitty. She had been hit by a car at some point in her life, so she had issues with her back legs. And so she also had bladder issues and, you know, chronic infections. And she had had a very severe infection and needed certain antibiotics. But she did come back, and she spent, you know, a good quality another 6 or 8 months with me. But she ended up in a renal failure situation, and, you know, having, I think one of the most challenging choices too is making a choice to euthanize a cat also. And that's another challenging conversation, because I've had it happen both ways, you know, a cat passing naturally, and then also making the choice that the cat's in discomfort and in pain, and, you know, would like to have some assistance. And, you know, I feel it's a great, almost burden placed on the shoulders of a human. And is it a burden that we should readily accept too? I don't know. I don't have mixed feelings about it. I believe there's a place for it, but with regards to my skill level in doing that job for a pet, I'm not so convinced I'm the right person for that job, but it's a job I don't want to pass away to anybody else either.
I was forced to make decisions real time in 10 hours. I brought her in at 11 o'clock, and she died at 9. And I didn't choose to euthanize her. I chose to supportive care.
Did you feel pressure to make a decision?
Yes. The overwhelming.
That's a big issue.
Yes.
It's a huge issue.
She was 4 and I was sudden. So I felt I was making the right decision based on the test available. So if I was presented with more tests, maybe I would have made a different decision.
That's when you, that's when you need to step back, remove yourself from the medical situation, put everything on hold, and go outside, and then just sort of listen to your heart. Because I have been in that situation where medically it was indicated that the animal should be put to sleep. But I fought that, and I insisted that they honor my request. They gave me dire warnings, but I chose deliberately not to listen to what they were saying, but to what I was hearing from within inside. And that's an important process to go through, which most of us can't do because they're under duress.
Yes. I was under duress.
I'm sure you were.
And I attempted to make the right decision, but you know, I hoped she would make it. So many times, because of my loss, it's excruciating. But I'm heartbroken. But many times people say, you know, when did you euthanize? And I said, no.
Right.
She was regaining vitals, and she arrested. So.
Right.
But you, I mean, I don't know your specific background, but you seem a lot more comfortable in that medical realm or area than I am at all. And so, and you ask a lot of questions, and you're not shy about that, where I'd be like, okay, yes, sir, you know.
I ask a lot of questions, but I consulted coincidentally with Tufts. A vet was on staff, a social worker vet, and his name is Eric. Do you know him, of Richmond? But I would discuss my problem and grief because of and guilt. It's an odd combination, but he said as well, you know a lot about medicine. So I'm thinking, yeah.
But guilt is like the constant in these issues. Did I wait too long? Did I not wait long enough?
Yes.
What would have happened if? should I have done this? If I had only had the extra $5,000 to spend on the care, but maybe another day would have made a difference. Or if the doctor were different, would the outcome of it? It just goes on and on and on
Right.
and on and on.
So
I've experienced
how do we close that? Do we close that door? Or how do we deal with that to feel comfortable enough to be able to move on? I mean, the phone call that I got from a friend of mine, and he was like, you know, my cat, who was my buddy, passed away, and the grief is unbearable. The cat was outside, had been eaten by a coyote, and you know, it was just devastating for him. But yet that cat used to follow him around in the garden. The amount of positive and wonderful and loving times that they had outside together, you know, as like buddies. But then there's like the guilt. There's the, like, you know, just I turn and I look to see the cat there, and the cat's not there anymore. You know, he's like, I just don't know. I don't know what to do next. You know, and I, you know, I suggested try and take a moment to celebrate the positive thoughts that he had about the cat and try and do something special as a way to sort of have, I mean, we use the standard word closure, but I mean, and then, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say, you know, oh, turn around and run up and adopt another kitty. But maybe that is the right path for somebody. I would say people have such different responses, and I don't know how would you help them? I don't know how to help people in that position.
Yeah. No, at first, a couple of things you said that were very helpful, very on target. Like a film, for example, if you see the end of a film, that's not the whole film. You know, so these last moments, this last 6 months, this last 24 hours, I think, as you were saying, is not the life that you've had with the animal.
Right.
It's an extremely compressed, deeply intense, very heightened experience. Not in your case, it didn't happen. You didn't have 10 years or 12 years or 8 years or whatever. But that you need to look at the entire life of the animal and your relationship to it and understand that this is almost an anomaly, an inevitable one, but it's not representative.
Right.
Then I guess you have to accept that you're not God, and there is no way that you are omnipotent and omniscient and you can't know everything. So you have to accept that I think you do. There'll always be questions, always be uncertainties, always be doubts. Was there always something else that could have been done? Again, a different doctor, more money, different tests. Yes, but that's not going to get you anywhere. Thirdly, I don't like the word closure because I don't think there is closure. I think that we pathologize loss. We see it as something to be gotten through so that we can return to normalcy, return to stasis. So we go to therapy, for example, and let's get this person feeling well and get them back to normal. But there's no normal. The normal has changed forever.
It's a different balance.
Gone.
The balance is different.
The loss is permanent. The absence is forever. You will integrate it into your life and you will grow into it. But so there's no normal to return to. So that's why when people say, well, I need to go to a therapist, and I often find myself saying, well, you know, and I've said this before, sadness, sorrow, grief are not pathological conditions. They're not things that you give a pill to. They're matters of the soul, matters of the spirit. You grieve because you loved. You feel acute loss because you loved. There's nothing wrong with you. Now, it's possible for grief and loss to become stubborn, unmoving, and they can then tip into what we call complicated grief, which then becomes depression, in which case that's a different story altogether. But for grief and loss to be considered the realm of psychotherapy or even pathology, it's just not the case. So we accept that there's no normal to return to. We accept we're not God. We don't have with total vision. There's no closure because what is there to close? And then you move to a new relationship, you shift the relationship from one of the being, the animal, to one of relationship. And because the animal dies, doesn't mean the relationship is dead.
So, because I'm moving through this period of time now, first of all, many people are uncomfortable.
Yes.
I'm in my grief, but if I talk about my grief, I discomfort someone because they don't have pets, or they have a more philosophical approach in terms of, you know, death and life. So I'm getting around to it, but what is normal in terms of the grieving period and moving on?
Oh, there's no normal.
That's a fantastic
But-
question.
No, there's no normal.
But yes, I agree, but you know, I have...
Are you asking the question to have an answer for them?
Yes, mostly the audience, maybe the audience.
Oh.
Or
you
are
know?
there things that we need to worry about? Like we talk about acceptance, which I think is a really interesting word and something we don't use very much. I mean, we use the word closure a lot more. I think acceptance is a nice way
I
of,
would say- okay, I'm sorry.
identifying that
Yeah.
that path. But I think, you know, I also wonder, you know, where does it turn into depression? Or are there certain signs or things that we need to look for with our friends, within ourselves, where we should worry and think that we are falling into a hole that we're not going to get ourselves out of?
You're right. Absolutely right. I think that to just take a step back, we have to recognize, Paul was saying, the grief is not necessarily accepted. And people will say, get over it. It's only a dog. Get over it. It's only a cat.
Yeah.
Or get another animal. And,
Yes.
you know, I mean, it's not a child, God forbid. But yet, you know, the grief that we feel for the loss of our animal companion is often deeper than what we feel for a relative or even a close friend.
Yeah.
People have said to me, you know, when my parents died, I didn't feel as bad. I didn't cry as deeply. Why is that? I feel terrible about that. So then you talk, and you find out that their relationship, his relationship with his parents, was complex. That his parents hurt him, he hurt them, and they didn't always get along, and there was a lot of difficulty. But that wasn't true with his animal companion. It was a pure relationship. So then when you say, if you do say, I feel more pain than I do with a relative that died, people think you're crazy. So
Yeah.
once you accept that it's okay, that your grief is, you are validating it, and you don't need anybody on the outside to say it's okay, that takes a tremendous weight off. That begins to relieve some of the pressure. What I'm seeing now, and there's a Center for Loss in Boulder, Colorado, and the author of these books is wonderful. His name is Alan Wolfeld, Wolfeld. And he has shifted the concept of grief counseling to what he calls grief companioning, in which case you companion the griever.
Oh, interesting.
And you companion them through the wild journey, which is their grief, through the contour of their grief. He removes the concept of the expert, and you, the griever, are the expert. You are my teacher. I learn from you what you need. And it takes me a while to understand the language that you're speaking. But then as your companion, I can be with you. And then to go back to your question about, then maybe I can spot with you some of those unmoving, stuck grief points along the trail, that maybe it's excessive anxiety, not sleeping, maybe it's suicidal thoughts, maybe it's not eating, maybe it's not wanting to get up in the morning. Some of that is perfectly fine. But if your companion begins to perceive this as being somewhat chronic, then you have to be alert to then maybe bring in a mental health professional.
I'm formerly from Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
So,
I'm almost certain it's Boulder, but you know what? I get the cities in Colorado confused.
it's okay, you know.
But
Boulder,
it's called
it makes sense. It makes
it's the
sense.
center for Boulder or Fort Collins. Anyway, I'll look it up and I'll let you know. Sure.
Okay, okay.
I'll look him up.
Yeah, I'm thinking a companion for their journey sounds nice.
That's what it is. That's the name of his book, in fact.
Yeah,
Companioning the Greed.
Yeah, I'm thinking if I live alone, but I have other pets and they need me as well. But you know, I have my moments.
How did they respond to the absence of what was
Coco.
Coco. She was always playful. She was a shelter rescue in Colorado, but she was always playful, and she attempted to play with all the other cats, and they would have nothing of her because they were older. So mostly they ignored her, and sometimes they growled because they didn't want to play. So in the absence of Coco, they come out more because they're
They're not on watch.
they're not on watch because Coco will, you know, spring. But she was a kind, gentle soul, and she purred all the time. She played all the time. She was a kitten at 4 years old. She didn't have a, you know, malice. I'm missing her.
Yeah.
So they didn't mourn her then, that you could see.
I didn't. Yeah.
Cats can be tough.
Yeah, cats are tough to read. They're tough to read.
Yeah.
Case in point,
They are.
I didn't respond to her ailment immediately, thinking I was aware, but I'm thinking I'm giving it time, and I didn't know.
Khalil, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about the ministry, where it's located, and how often it occurs, and sort of what happens when you meet?
Yeah, it's new to us. It's a few months old now. And we meet every third Sunday of the month. We're not meeting for the summer. We're holding off until September. And it's at the Stratford Street Church in West Roxbury. It's a lovely parlor. It's kind of Victorian looking in a way. And people come from all walks of life, healthcare workers, plain folk, whatever. And we meet in the church parlor. It's certainly not denominational. And the last two sessions, we were working on developing intuition as a prelude, precursor to working with animal communication. And then, of course, we have a candle lighting, and we have a meditation. And we do remember the pets that have gone on into spirit and are not with us. Sometimes there are stories that people want to tell about. So there's that, and then the ministry part is sometimes these people need they want extra help, so I'll work with them privately as a companion. And then would then try to get into the community itself and do the ministry for taking care of unloved pets, animals who need attention, who need care, elderly citizens who need, so it's that two-part, and we meet at the Stratford Street Church. It's really in West Roxbury Center, and absolutely everybody's welcome. They could email me for further information or not directions. You could find it in your GPS. So
I would assume the information's on your website?
yeah, it should be.
Which is petgriefhelp.com.
.com,
Is that
or
correct?
the other one for that is petministryboston.com. Either way, yeah. It's good. It's fun. It's great to watch people develop aspects of themselves. We use our rational mind so much. So the last exercise was they just had a sort of a small box, and most people need to guess what's in the box. by the weight, by the size, but they were merely just to sense, to see if they could sense what energies they were getting from the box, which then goes back to your picking up from Coco, learning to read her. When you say cats are tough, and they are, but there are steps to take, to be able to connect with them in that way, which is different from what Dr. Geller does as a cat behaviorist.
Right, Rachel Geller, who's been a past guest on
She'll
the
watch
show.
the behavior. She's brilliant at it,
Yep.
and I love the work that she does. We were thinking of, in fact, doing a show together in which this would be the cat behaviorist's approach. This would be the animal communicators' approach, and where they're different and where they overlap.
It's a need. Stacy and I have got the fortune of knowing a lot of shy cats and feral cats, and the cats that don't communicate or cooperate. So it's for me, Coco was a breath of fresh air because she was a normal cat.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's a funny comment. The concept of normal cat. I mean, it's, yeah, and it sounds like, some people communicate more easily than others, right?
Yep.
I'll
share a story of how one of my, I would call her a no-see-em. So that was a feral cat that basically was a sort of placeholder in the house. And so she was sort of like a step up from a goldfish. Like she took about the amount of care as it took to take care of a goldfish, but she moves from room to room. You can't touch her, but she kind of moves from room to room. And I had her for 16 years and loved my other cats and got along great with them, but not me. And then as she got older, she was getting thinner, and we moved, and she had gotten into some plants that I think compromised her kidneys also. My semi-feral was like the bridge to then my more friendly cat, so they were like the 3 levels. And then there was one morning she was sleeping on the bed in her room, and she let me pet her whole body and looked at me, and I said, I am not taking you in to be euthanized. You're going to have to make this choice because I can't do this for you, because I knew that was the last place she'd ever want to be to spend her last minute. My other 2 cats spent the whole day with her. I left and went and did my usual activities. Came back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My other 2 cats were still in there with her, and she had passed. And and I never would have thought my normal cat, the social one, would have done that sort of a vigil, really. And he did, and it was just amazed me that there's something more going on there that I don't know anything about.
There's also something more going on with goldfish too. There really is.
Yeah.
I apologize to all the goldfish owners out there.
We have a goldfish at home.
I'm so sorry.
When Wendy, my wife, comes to the glass, he knows she's there, not just for food.
Yep.
They talk to each other. But I understand your point, the point that you're making.
Right.
And that's, I think, a divine moment.
Yeah.
I think that is a kind of a spiritual calling that your other animals responded to and accompanied her, guided her, allowed her to be held as she moved from one plane to the next.
Right.
So much of this depends, I think, upon a person's religious or spiritual view. Some people, I was asked if I knew if I would be less afraid of dying if I knew I would meet my cat in heaven. And people ask that question: is there a heaven for cats? Will we see them when we cross over? Will they be waiting there for us? What is this rainbow bridge? Will they really be waiting for us? And those are, in some ways, they're cultural questions. In some ways, they're religious questions, and spiritual questions, matters of personality, how a person's wired.
Very interesting.
But I think they are spiritual beings, and I really think we will come together again.
Yeah, I mean, you know, after she had passed, I said thank you, you
You
know,
did,
because that was the smoothest transition sort
Lucky
of that
you.
I had of all the animals, the cats that I've had. It was, everything seemed very clear to me, you know, and she was the one. I
It was a
mean,
gift to you.
Yeah,
It was a gift.
yeah.
And you know, the mourning part of this is critical too, because the grief is what is internal. When we mourn, it's really external. And we need to do those ceremonies. I mean, it used to be in the old days when we had big families, or somebody passed away, there was this wake and this funeral, and people came. And now it's like a no-death society. So a child could end up not experiencing death until he or she was 30 years old or 40 years old.
Right.
Imagine that. And you know, now we have memorial services instead of wakes often, or it's clean. We're a grief avoiding society. Showing excessive emotion is considered uncouth.
It's uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. But we need that.
Right.
We need, even with our animals, we need a tree planted. We need a funeral service. We need an informal service even, a marker, a rose bush planted. We need a poem written. That just helps memorialize the life that we shared.
Right.
And helps us pass through the grief.
And all of it. I mean, I still think it's great to go back to remember it's not that snippet that maybe that's a poignant moment of time, but we want to remember all of the moments
That's exactly right, Stacey.
that we've had to bring back to that. At this point, I want to mention to folks, please stay tuned to the end of the show, because we are going to have a video of a kitty named Hawkins that we rescued in Chelsea that had been hit by a car. And he had a broken jaw and needed to be treated. And because of your support of Hubcats Chelsea, he was fostered, he was treated, he was put up for adoption, and I just also heard that he has found a home.
Bravo.
Yes.
So there's a nice video showing him when he was at his way station waiting an adoption transfer partner to take him and to finish up his recovery and to get him into that perfect home. So please tune in at the end of the show to see this video of Hawkins. And while we have been talking about pet grief and our pets passing, there are quite a few happy endings, and I'm just thrilled to be able to share that with folks today.
Nice.
Any last minute thoughts, Khalil, before we do a little wrap up with regards to what's going on with Hubcats Chelsea?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm really touched to be here and to hear your stories. And
I think it's been a great conversation,
it's been a good
not an
conversation.
easy one,
No, it's really
especially for Laura. And I want to thank Laura for
yeah.
being able to share and be vulnerable
That
today,
just happened to
because
you.
for me, we're talking years ago, and for you, we were talking weeks ago. So I appreciate that very, very much.
Thank you.
And unfortunately or fortunately, maybe Khalil can help us and make us be able to understand the celebration of it, and understanding that, you know, we are going to be faced with these moments, but the moments are part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, and to stay present as much as you can, and that's difficult because you're always imagining, well, what am I going to do when? And then you lose the present. So do your best.
So Laura, you want to share a little bit with us, like changing the subject on a whole different topic, but just recently you were at the, was it the Art Walk?
The art walk this weekend in Chelsea. I was attending Saturday, and Pepper was present Sunday, and we were stationed at the community gardens. So it was a nice event.
That's good. And I believe we're going to do a bit of an effort to be at the Science Fest, which is
in August.
Yeah, in August. And so I think we're going to be increasing our tabling for different events. So if there are folks that are out there that are interested in volunteering with us and helping, spending a couple of hours at a table, you please let us know. Volunteers can do anything and everything with us, from collecting donation cans to sitting at a table to helping with transporting cats. So there's so many opportunities. So please don't be shy and feel free to reach out to us. You can always email us at hubcatschelsea@gmail.com. And I will put a plug out that we are working on putting together a fall auction, fundraising auction. So we are actively looking for donations of gift certificates. You could donate babysitting, you could donate a home-cooked meal. Those are always very popular items. If you knit, you knit something. I have knitted one scarf in my life. So I guess I'm not as crafty as other people, but if you are a crafty person and you've got something that you've made, jewelry, really anything, please do reach out to us. We're aiming for 200 items. So that is a lot of items. And our committee meets on the second Tuesday of every month. It's at the police station around 6:30, and the public is welcome. Anybody is welcome. You don't have to be just from Chelsea. Anybody is welcome to come and participate in those meetings. Anything else that you want to add, Laura?
When is the next clinic? I don't know. It's
I believe our next microchipping and vaccination clinic, which this past one assisted 247 animals. And a big thank you and a shout out to the MSPCA for partnering with us on that, as well as the City of Chelsea. Officer Texiera was there, and they allowed us to use their park. And we had 247 animals, which was a record, cats and dogs there. So that was great. And one interesting statistic that came out of that is the number of sterilized cats and dogs that came was a much higher percentage than there had been during our first two clinics, which meant that our free spaying and neutering services that we've been offering residents of Chelsea, I think, are making a difference in the number of cats and dogs that are spayed and neutered in the community. So we are beginning to see an impact and change in those numbers. So I think that's fantastic. And should be continuing. Our next clinic is slated to be, I believe it's October 21st. It's that first Sunday in the October 20s, and I think it's Sunday, October 21st. And we'll certainly have information on our website about that, which is at hubcatschelsea.com. We've had quite a bit of work done on the website. We continue to work to improve it, so please keep an eye on that, as well as our Facebook page. We want to build that up, so please be aggressive. Share that with your friends and family. And also you can donate there. You can donate to Hubcats Chelsea by going to hubcatschelsea.com, or you can always email us at hubcatschelsea@gmail.com. Our phone number is 857-776-2287. Khalil, I want to thank you so very much. Do you have any last thoughts for our listeners at this point?
No, thank you both for, I always learn mostly from being in these situations. You both were very gracious and very compassionate people. So thank you both.
Well, thank you. And Laura, thank you again for joining me today. It's always a pleasure. And thank you for making the show happen.
I wouldn't miss it.
Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. And feel free to tune into our other shows. I hope you'll check them out. Make sure you have listened and seen our shows. We're now at the point, we're almost at a dozen episodes, so you can even binge watch us if you wanted to.
A marathon.
A marathon. You can have a Hubcats Chelsea marathon. And please remember that there'll be no cat left behind in Chelsea. Have a good day.